it's all about leaving a legacy for me. And once it's left, I want people to know, like, yo, he did a good job for the time that he did do a podcast.
You don't play. Before we get started on today's episode, I'd like to introduce to you our Black-owned business of the week, where we showcase quality Black-owned businesses for you to support every week. This week's business is the VIP Lounge, Barbershop, and Spa, co-owned by the 757's own Emmett Downing. The VIP Lounge, Barbershop, and Spa has 2 convenient locations here in Norfolk and offers a premium grooming experience, including the freshest fades, starter locks, and waxing services for the ladies. If you're looking to upgrade your self-care regimen, be sure to book an appointment with one of their many talented staff, including Yaz, Wayne, or Emmett himself.
Ever since their initial inception in the early 2000s, podcasting has taken off, with the term itself entering the mainstream, and fast forward to today, where you can find podcasts ranging from the Joe Rogan Experience to Crime Junkies. On this week's episode of the Infusion BreakDown Show, the Breakdown crew sat in among ourselves, along with 2 special guests, Sherman Gums of the 75 Junction and Larry the Wavy Fellow from the WaveTalk Podcast, to discuss why do we podcast, as well as the ins and outs of the art of podcasting. Let's see what we come up with.
So the question we have for today, why do you podcast? Comment below, let us know your opinion. We also have timestamps in the description below as always. Be sure to check them out. Also, today's guests include Larry the Wavy Fellow and Sherman from the 75 Junction.
So before we get started, I kind of want to give a little bit of background context as to how this episode came to be. And this was actually a follow-up discussion that was part of a podcast I did with Larry. So on the WaveTalk Podcast, we did an episode on how to build a foundation. And we looked at that specifically through the lens of podcasting, but it applied to all content creators as a whole. And so some of the challenges that we discussed on there were pretty much parallels of what it is to be an entrepreneur. A lot of the same challenges were applied, including scheduling and priority, balancing with personal life, garnering support, as well as the additional layer of complexity with the algorithms that we face as online content creators, as much as I hate that cliche term. And then following that conversation, I wanted to do a follow-up episode in which we drill down into what it is exactly that we do and the finer details of the art of podcasting. So with that being said, in the context provided, I'd like to hand it over and give the floor to our guests and allow them to retort and answer the question of what made them take an interest in podcasting and how did your podcast come to be?
Okay, dope. First and foremost, thank you, for reaching out and having me up here and for rescheduling, because it's supposed to be last week, but here we are. So, appreciate that. But yeah, so starting podcasting, man, it was on a whim, honestly. So my boy, he was telling me about podcasts. I didn't really listen to them before. Like, I knew about them conceptually. I've heard about them, but I never actually sat down and listened to a podcast. And when I sat down and listened to one, it was like, oh, this is just, conversation. So that's literally all it is, just conversation and just talking about whatever we would talk about otherwise. Like you get with the boys, y'all have conversations about any and everything. So I was like, yeah, why not just, make that into a platform where we can just have conversations. So that's what it started off as. And then as it, went on through time, I started thinking, okay, well, I see more potential in this than what it actually is. So let me start doing interviews and interviewing people that are entrepreneurs, business owners, music artists, MUAs, whatever the case may be in the local area, and kind of highlight what's going on in 757. And I've done other artists outside of 757, like 804 and things like that. But I say that to say that was the direction that it changed and started going in. Was I started, bringing light things that were happening in the area, who was doing what, who had what project coming, and all that stuff. So realistically, the biggest reason though was because I wanted to teach other people things through me, in the sense that I sit there, I facilitate the interview, I ask the questions, and then, obviously the questions get answered. So not only am I learning, but the people that are listening are learning as well, if they didn't know that information already. So right. I think it's a good, valuable resource to teach other people, whatever it may be. I did an interview with somebody that sold sex toys and stuff like that. Like it's a wild concept, but that's the thing there. So she was, I forget her specific title, but she basically sold sex toys. She gave advice to relationships on how to spice up their relationships and stuff like that. So, I've done a plethora of other interviews that were interesting as well. Like somebody that was a Grammy Award nominated and winning songwriter. They write songs, and they gave me the stipulations behind writing a song. And the contract says you have X amount of songs you have to fulfill, but if you write 15 songs and they only like a few bars or a few lines out of those songs, it has to add up to what their definition of one song is. So even if you have 15 and they took 5 lines out of all 15, you just wrote 15 songs and you still haven't fulfilled your obligation. So so there's a lot of things that people don't know that go on behind the scenes. And I feel like that's something that I wanted to bring attention to. So yeah, that's why I got started and I guess kind of stuck with it. I've taken a backseat on it now. I still do it every once in a while. It's not as often.
That's one thing that I noticed. It was very apparent. You take the mindset of a student, which is a good thing to do, in the way that you are able to answer the questions that get at the heart of the issue that you're trying to get at, and then also get the person to reveal information that may already not be readily available. So there's general things like you could just ask, okay, so what do you do? But that's pretty much given. But with the question that you ask is more so getting into the underlying implications and making it unique, something that they can't just go, or somebody can't just do a Google search and find out just because it's just widely known. Like you're making something that gives value because it's something specific they can only get on your platform.
Right.
That's dope. Larry, did you want to go next?
Yeah, I can go next. My the reason why I started kind of aligns with his as well, and but it was more so like I just wanted to be able to tell the truth without being afraid, because I met Sebi in college, and me and Sebi was talking, and he was like, "Yeah, you should do a podcast." I was like, "Nah, man, I don't think I'm ready for that yet, man. I don't even like talking to people, so I'm not ready." He was like, "You don't got to do it now, but if you want to, I think you'd be the right person to do it, because me and him, we have real deep intellectual conversations about the world, music, even school and the government and stuff." So he was like, "Yeah, bro, I just think you should put that out there to the world." I was like, if I do a podcast, it's not gonna be about me. I want it to be about one, the message to the people, two, whoever comes on the podcast, I want them to be able to exploit themselves and do something different and be able to have a real genuine conversation with a person that's not gonna judge them. I always ask my guests before I get on the podcast, what can I ask? What can I say? If I can say this, that, and they just say, ask anything. And I just make sure I make it one real and comfortable. And I was like, I don't know, bro, I don't know. Then the COVID happened. Then I was like, you know what? Let me just dedicate my time into thinking it. So I stayed up 3 days in a row, no sleep, just writing literally 100 episodes full of content, 10 seasons and all that, just because one, I had it in my head and I didn't want to go to waste, and two, I feel like when the time will come, it'll all make sense. So now I'm here, and I mainly just like seeing the outcome of having a podcast, because like he said, I like learning, I like learning new things and talking to people, hearing their story. Because I did a podcast with one of my homies that I didn't know was into like cryptocurrency and stuff. Me and him had a deep conversation about that, and he taught me some things on cryptocurrency. So I was like, yeah, man, overall, just being true to myself and opening up more is what made me want to do the podcast. Seeing people grow, seeing that there's talent out there, and a lot of people that are like me that don't like to talk or want to voice their opinion can come on the show, or even people that's interested and just want to talk can come on the show and just make it comfortable, make it real, and just cool. That's all I try to make it. That's why it's like wavy, because it's my type of style intertwined with the realness.
It's been awesome seeing you grow your podcast over the past year that I've known you. I think we first linked up on, was it last year?
Yeah, it was last year.
Doesn't seem like that long, but I was just thinking about like what episode were you first on? It was the one we had. We talked about the goat, being the goat.
Yep.
I guess I'll give my take on the question. So I first got into podcasting, well, the concept of it, when I was on the path of self-discovery and reconstructing myself after a really dark period of my life. It wasn't, I'll just leave it at that. It wasn't terrible, but at the same time, it was a personal low. After I had graduated university and was going through some stuff. And after discovering some other podcasters, mainly Joe Rogan and other thinkers, I began to branch out and explore other podcasts and consume that content. And that introduced me to other thinkers that I enjoyed listening to and helped me discover myself and explore different ideas, such as Jordan Peterson, Gad Saad, Brett Weinstein, a lot of the guys from the quote unquote intellectual dark web. And I realized that I had been having conversations like these for years with my friends and people around me, or conversations of that caliber, obviously with less qualifications, because at that point, none of us were neither as accomplished as these men. We didn't have PhDs, we weren't professors, we weren't clinical psychologists, we were evolutionary biologists like Gad said, evolutionary psychologists in his case. But at the same time, we were concerned about the same concepts, the inner workings of why people did the things that they did, why we felt the way that we did, and the future, which was just still uncertain. And so there was a few revelations that I had after that. It was that there's a market for long form discussions where there was an intellectual exchange of ideas. And then also, this was brought about kind of from my contempt from just being around other people that were just really interested in surface level interactions, that were just content with going out to party every weekend. Like I had my fair share of that at college. But at the same time, I enjoyed having conversations of consequence and building meaningful relationships with other people. And so I wanted to create a platform that serves two purposes, which was primarily, this is our tagline, our goal is to make you think, and then to serve as a promotional tool and networking opportunity for individuals, kind of like we are today. And I feel largely we've been very successful at that. I really don't care, back to the first point of to make people think. I don't care if people agree with me or not. The fact is that I'm more concerned with whether or not they're able to draw value or be able to realize something that they hadn't already before, or even strengthen their argument because, okay, they understand the opposition and they still feel the way that they do. And then I really find a lot of value, and I hope that you guys do too, by exposing different people's followings to other people's followings, cross-pollination, and seeing the subsequent works that come from it. Like it's really cool when we have two guests on and then we find out that they've linked up and worked on something else in the future. Like that's really dope. And I think that's really what we're getting at, is just the idea that we can come together and build something greater together than we could as our individual parts. And that's kind of where the infusion comes from, because not only when we first started, I've said this plenty of times, but I'll say it again. But when we started, we were drinking tea when we recorded, and we used a tea infuser. But also, the three of us, we came together to build something greater than each of our individual parts. So that's, I guess, another wordplay on the infusion. So that's where the Infusion BreakDown Show actually came from. And when we came about forming the podcast, the first person I reached out to was actually Josh. And it didn't take much convincing to get him to be on board with the idea of doing a podcast. So I'm curious on what exactly his thoughts are, what was going inside of his head, and why does he podcast?
I agree with a lot of what you said. For me, it wasn't really a dark place, like a dark time in my dark place or anything like that. I wasn't in a dark place or anything like that. For me, it was really what you said, just to make people think, because what I used to do on Instagram, I do kind of do it sometimes. I actually ask philosophical questions and just ask people like just random philosophical questions, yes or no, or just two answers, and people vote on it. And that's really where I got the idea from. I thought about doing this, and I thought about, well, maybe I can expand it to some type of podcast, because I like philosophical questions and I like asking people questions and everything like that. And I think having an actual discussion between a group of people will actually be a very good thing to do. So that's really was my actual intention, just to get people to think. As I'm actually doing it, as I actually be podcasting more, I feel it kind of gradually evolved more into like sharing experiences, because everybody on the podcast has different experiences with everything. So I just feel that's one of the biggest things, just sharing experiences and making people think. That's really the biggest thing. But it wasn't really like a dark place in my dark time and like dark place or anything. I was never in a dark place. It was really just about making people think and then going along with that and just seeing like how people were going to relate to it. But yeah.
And then that brings us to Des. So prior to us starting the podcast, I had never met Des before, even though we all went to the same university around the same time. And
before
Josh
we go to Des,
though,
before we go to Des, because Des, I kind of dragged Des into this too, because we used to work at Cloud9 together, and I used to ask him questions too, like random questions to see how you would think about it. So I kind of dragged him to that like that. But one thing I wanted to ask you guys before Des actually goes, like one thing I kind of pride myself with my YouTube channel and my videos is the difference between what I do, because there's a lot of podcasts out there. So it's basically like the difference between what I do and what everybody else does, and then finding that actual line. What I do like movie reactions, but I don't just do movie reaction. I do like review them and I grade them too. And I think there's a whole bunch of movie reactions on the internet, but people see that I actually review them and grade them. It's something that's actually different. So the question I want to ask you guys, what do you feel makes your podcast different from just every other podcast out there?
Yeah, that's a good question, because obviously it's a very saturated market, and with anything that's saturated, you have to figure out a way to differentiate yourself and show that you're unique and have something different to offer. So I watched different podcasts and things like that, and I looked at what everybody was doing and who had what going on, and a lot of things I noticed, and even in like big podcasters like Joe Rogan, in my opinion, his setup was not a good setup for as much money that he was making doing it. You know what I'm saying? Like bro, you make hundreds of thousands of dollars a month most likely. Like you can afford to have, like, if I had that budget, I would have Red cameras, I would have swiveling like cameras, like during the interview I would have like the utmost supreme audio, like everything would be pristine, you know what I'm saying? So quality was lacking, so I was like, okay, how can I bring quality and make it look and sound professional? So I did a lot of research on videography, I did a lot of research on different types of cameras, just so I can make sure that I can offer that quality. I like the multiple angles. I feel like everybody should have their own angle, then have like an angle of the whole room. So I have 3 angles when I do my podcast. That way it switches between them. So I have to do all that in the editing too. But I do video editing as well, so I know how to do all that stuff. It was just a matter of figuring out the video portion and then the audio portion to find the best middle ground to get, and I'm not saying I have the best quality audio or video, but I wanted to make sure that if I was going to do it in an oversaturated market, it looks good, it sounds good, and it's going to make sure that people are like, oh, he's like serious about this. You know what I'm saying? He's putting in the money, he's putting the time and the research to make sure that, he can present a nice, neat, well put together project. So that's really what I think I did different was the aesthetic, and just making sure that for a smaller podcast it looked like a big podcast, if that makes sense.
Yeah, the aesthetics, like I said, I want to echo the fact that there's a tremendous amount of effort that you put into doing that, and that really sets it apart, and complete night and day difference. Like no shade at Joe Rogan, but I 100% agree with the difference in the setups. Like you could tell there's definitely intent that went into yours.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and his setup, he changed it. So I mean, his setup now, I like the way it looks better now. Like the old one with like the brick wall behind him and stuff. I'm like, bro,
Yeah.
come on. Like, I was like, you can do better than that, bro. You got a lot of damn money. Come on, man. Like, I would have a fucking warehouse, bro, a creative warehouse, and one room would be dedicated to podcasts, and one room would be like a green room. One room would be like, I don't know, man. I guess everybody doesn't have a business mind state when it comes to these things. I feel like Joe Rogan kind of just stumbled upon podcasting because people are like, oh, this dude gets high as fuck and talks to interesting people, so let's just check it out. And he's like, fuck it, everybody likes it, so I'm gonna do it. The guy cuss up here, my bad.
No, you're good.
Okay, yeah.
Can't cuss.
So I mean, but yeah, I feel like that's how it happened with Joe Rogan. I don't know. Obviously, I don't know the man. I didn't do like an origin story on him or anything like that, but that's how it seems looking from the outside and based off of what was put into it.
Gotcha.
And I still consider him one of probably the greatest podcaster of all time.
Oh no, absolutely. Like I said, like he's great at what he does. He's phenomenal. But as far as the vision, as far as like putting it together visually, aesthetically, I feel like that lacks. The audio sounds great though. The audio is good. Like they got that down back. I think he has a specific person for the audio, correct?
Right.
And then looks stuff up during the interviews and stuff.
Jamie?
I think so. Yeah. So he has a person in store for that. Now he needs to get a person to do the redesign for the aesthetic to make it look like oh shit, like this is legit. You know what I'm saying? But like I said, he did redo it. So I like the way it looks now. So.
Larry, did you want to answer Josh's question? That's you about to ask Josh?
Yeah. What makes your podcast different?
What makes my podcast different is that one, how I normally do anything that I'm in, as far as like dancing or focusing on creating like a brand or just writing down anything. I just love to take the process as slow as possible because for me, I don't like to rush nothing. I don't like to do too much because if I do, I feel like I'm rushing my vision that I have planned, and it's not gonna be as genuine once it fully hits you. And secondly, like I said, I do more than just do a podcast. I dance. I'm a social media manager for a dance company named Surge. So it's like what I do, I'm around all these creative people and I try to just bring them to my world because I'm always in everybody else's world. And I want people to see that one is dark, because everybody got a bad day, everybody have a good day, but it's all the beauty from it, that the growth, like the end result of it is just gonna be beautiful. So that's just separates me because I know a lot of podcasters jumped in it like quick with all like the super high tech cameras, mics, and things like that, and then I like doing podcasting like after like 2-3 months, and it's all about leaving a legacy for me. And once it's left, I want people to know like, yo, he did a good job for the time that he did do a podcast. So that's what separates me.
Gotcha.
Josh, I feel what separates. I was gonna just follow on what you said real quick.
Okay.
So I think another thing that separates us too is our unique format. The fact that we discuss a different question each week, and then even more so when we do have guests. The concept is to introduce people to thinkers and entrepreneurs that they may not have been exposed to otherwise, but in a different format than your traditional interview. So we're not specifically just going through and asking them if, for example, with the sisters from Soulstar Tea and Wellness, we didn't ask them, okay, so when did you start your tea and wellness company? Okay, so what goes into making tea? We weren't just interviewing them about the tea process. We were actually more curious about their thoughts as individuals. And then if you like the things that they say. If you are curious about them, you can do some more research. But here's also some links where you can purchase some tea as well. So the tea wasn't the focal point of the discussion, the people were. So we take a more people-centric approach than other podcasts, because they typically focus on interview and process things that you've accomplished, things that you've done. Whereas we're concerned about, like Josh, what you were saying, it became more concerned about the experiences that were shared between individuals. So I think that's another thing that makes us largely unique.
I agree. You're up, Mr. Tillman.
Make it sound great, huh? For me, the reason why I get in, or why I got into podcast was just like Josh said. You know, we worked together not just at Cloud9, but we were also, he got me into ABA therapy. So we always just used to have abnormal conversation. Like there were things that we would talk about that wouldn't be relevant at all. It's more or less just trying to understand the why behind a lot of things, and then also trying to understand, the why behind certain people's perspective. So, just being at the time, we were 2 assistant managers at Cloud9. Like we'd see the damnest stuff every day, and it just stuff that just make you have like the question marks. What'd you say?
Assistant managers.
Yeah, we were assistant managers.
Is that what we were? Or we were
shift lead is another word for assistant manager.
Oh, okay, whatever. Okay, I'm used to shift lead. That's why I'm used to shift lead.
Yeah. Okay. Shift lead is just an assistant manager. So yeah, we were assistant managers there, and like we would just see the craziest stuff every day, stuff that just makes you kind of like have like little imaginary question marks over your head. So it's just like always trying to understand the why, rather than being so judgmental. And of course, that just spilled over into my, political science and philosophy background. And that just, caused us to touch on like a lot of leaders. We weren't afraid to talk about Hitler together. We weren't afraid to talk about Malcolm X, Muhammad Ali, why he likes Muhammad Ali over Floyd. Like there wasn't any topic that was off limits for us. And I think that kind of, set the foundation for him asking me to be on the podcast, because just a random day at therapy, he's like, hey, my boy and I, we want to start a podcast, and we're thinking about having, this other person, and then it kind of be like a solid core of like 5. And eventually all that fell apart, and it stuck with just us 3. And, 100 episodes later, we're here. But the reason why I stuck with it, because there's been periods of times where I've gone on my hiatus or mentally just haven't been here. But I kind of like, anytime I've gone on a hiatus, even when we take ours in between seasons, it's like you can't ever forget that. And I think it's fitting today since it's Nipsey Hussle's birthday, but like the ability to inspire through your own experiences or anything of that nature is like that feeling that comes with it is second to none. And I found myself always telling people like, yo, you have a really cool story. Like if you can get behind the mic, or if you can, create a blog or whatever, and you just get people to hear your story, like it takes people out of that darkness, that dark corner of the room, feeling like they're fighting everything. And it allows people to, realize that they're not going through stuff alone. Like similar people have gone through the same stuff. And I mean, I think the most relevant like example of that is like, if we hop on Twitter right now, we see, person of color tweet something out, and it's like, damn, I thought I was the only one going through that. Like I seen something the other day, like it was Hawaiian Punch, those little like plastic, those plastic cups that like probably like yay high, and they have like that bluish tint to it. Like I feel like every black family household had it. It's like just regular tableware, but everybody had it, and everybody drunk their Hawaiian Punch out of that same cup when they were a kid. So it's like it's the same thought concept on the reverse side. Like if you allow yourself the platform to say what you got to say, touch who you got to touch, bring in whoever you got to bring in, and I feel like you'll do wonders. Like no matter if it's consistent 30 people or 3,000 people watching you every week, like there's something you're doing that is pushing the right buttons. And I mean, that's my main reason why, because I definitely respect Sherman's aspect, because Sherman's take on it was what my original take was. I just didn't have the resources at the time to expand on it. And then of course, with that absent mindedness towards it, I branched off into other areas that I could. But like, I'm real big on the aesthetics of things, and I think that was more prevalent now that we had to rework the logo and reworking the banner. And now we're eventually, when we get back into shooting in person, like there will be a sit down where multiple perspectives will be able to come together and just like agree on what looks the best. So I definitely respect that. And the same thing with Larry, like authenticity, I think is the cornerstone for every solid podcast. I think if you're able to, consistently produce those results, like this, it's a diamond in the rough. Like eventually everything will make sense and, the results will follow.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. Because you never know who's actually has the same experience you do, or just like feel like, oh damn, like I was feeling the same way. I know exactly how you mean. I don't know how many times you heard yourself like, Des, I saw the episode. I got exactly what you meant. I agreed everything with you. So but yeah, I understand. It's good. The experiences, man.
That's one of the most rewarding feelings is when you end up having follow-up conversations with people about things that they've seen and heard on the podcast. I've had countless messages, hour-long conversations, multiple hour-long conversations, all about things that I've said, guests have said, you guys have said, and it really shows that, like Des, whether you're touching 30 people or 30,000 or 30 million, it's the concept is somebody is taking something away from the podcast, and we're achieving our goal. So that's meaningful, and it's really inspiring the fact that we're able to do that. I had another question before we start going into, I guess, our segues. But Sherman, so you did mention that you had distanced yourself a little bit away from podcasting and we're waiting for the other people to join. And so I'm curious, is that a consequence of you getting more involved with Reanimated, which is another project, another endeavor that you have going on? Or was it due to some other reason?
Yeah, so it had a lot to do with Reanimated, just because that's something that is not as involved. I feel like the implications with the podcast are different, because obviously you want to make a good first impression on whoever is coming up on your podcast. You want to make sure you do research on the person. You got to do all these extra things. You got to edit the podcast. We have 3 angles. You actually have to do more editing. It's a lot, honestly. And I was doing it for free. You know what I'm saying? I didn't charge anybody for interviews or anything like that. I could have, but again, the point of it was to teach other people other things, and my payment was basically them reposting the clip that I would send them and exposing me to their people, and then their people will come follow me on my platform. And that's how I was able to kind of just build the followers on the platform organically, was just having word of mouth from people that I would bring on, and they would share they would share the interview, which is why I made it a point, like, okay, like smaller artists are cool, interviewing small artists are cool, but if they don't have a following, I'm working for free at that point. You know what I'm saying? Because I do enjoy podcasting, but when it comes to interviewing artists, I feel like a lot of them have the same story. I'm just gonna be real. A lot of them have the same exact story. A lot of it is the same. It's cookie cutter. It's like, yeah, I do this rap shit, blah blah blah, whatever. I got this EP dropping. I got da 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 da. And there's no knock to them. You gotta hustle. You gotta do what you gotta do. You believe in your music. You know what I'm saying? I expect you to do that. But a lot of them are the same, bro. And I'm just tired of doing the same questions and recycling the questions and stuff like that. And obviously you can switch it up and ask different questions, but I just got tired of doing that. And I didn't want the platform to be known for that, as far as like just interviewing music artists and stuff like that. So that kind of just turned me off from doing it, because it makes this impression that people have, like, oh, you have to do these types of interviews, because it kind of puts you in that lane. So I try to, like, if you don't have like a big following, I'm probably not gonna even entertain it. I'm just gonna be real, like, because like I said, my payment is the exposure. If I interview you and you post the clip on your page, it could have been the dopest interview in the world, but it's still not reaching people algorithmically, you know what I'm saying? Because That's the big word, is algorithm. So you want to look at the algorithm. You want to make sure that you get it to work in your favor. If it's not going to work in my favor and I'm doing the work for free, I'm honestly good on it, and some people might feel a way about that, and that's fine. But at the end of the day, you know what I'm saying, it's my platform, and I will conduct it how I see it should be conducted. You know what I'm saying? And that's just real. You know what I'm saying? I tell people all the time, I'm like, look, if you have an issue with not being on my platform, I encourage you, make your own platform. You know what I'm saying? If I'm not gonna do it for you, do it for yourself. You know what I'm saying? If you could do it better than me, then by all means do it. There's no harm, no foul. You know what I'm saying? I'm not gonna lose sleep over it. You know what I'm saying? Like, and vice versa. They shouldn't lose sleep over not being on my platform, because at the end of the day, I'm not the Breakfast Club. I'm not gonna put you on. You know what I'm saying? Like, you come on my platform, you're not gonna blow up overnight and whatever. A lot of people just want to get up here and talk their shit and then, you know, have it be that. Yeah, so that's why I took a step back from it, partly. And like I said, the bigger part was just Reanimated, because that's a reaction channel that I do where me and my boys, we sit down, we watch and react to anime, which is something we would do any given Sunday regardless.
Right.
That started blowing up. Right now it's at like 67,000 subscribers on YouTube, so I mean, it's doing fairly well. It's making money, you know, so obviously it's like, okay, let me prioritize here. Like, am I gonna work on something that's not making me money, or am I gonna focus on something that's making me money, and I can expound upon that and then cross-pollinate later if I want to, and then make another podcast, and, you know, just make it into something completely different aside from just reactions. Because realistically, my platform is 7.5 Junction. It's 7.5 Junction, so 757 exclusively, mutually exclusive to 757. The world doesn't give a damn about what's going on in 757. You know what I'm saying? So I've already limited myself as far as exposure is concerned. The world just doesn't care. You know what I'm saying? They want something that they can relate to, and they want something that's like, okay, I watch that too. So I was like, okay, anime. It's blowing up now. People liking anime now. People are coming from all over the place watching anime. It's worldwide. We literally have, you know, people that support us all over the world, like Russia, China, Brazil, Mexico, Australia, you name it. We have literally people all over the world, and that just opened my eyes to like the algorithm and how things work, and just, you know, just aiming at what your target market is, your demographic and stuff like that. So with 7.5 Junction, like I said, I personally limited my exposure based off of just making it exclusive to 757. So I did, you know, expand outside of that. So 804, I've done interviews with, you know, this dude named DJ Nick up in Maryland. I don't know if y'all know or heard of him or not, but
not really.
Okay, no, I got you. It's all good. But yeah, I mean, I've gone to Atlanta and done interviews with people in Atlanta. So I mean, I've done what I feel like I can with the platform. I'm not done with the platform. It's just not something that has my full undivided attention anymore. You know, it's kind of just like been put on the back burner. And then if I have somebody I really want to interview or I find them very interesting, then I'll bring them on and, you know, we'll sit down and make it happen. But as of right now, it's not something I'm doing. Like back then, I was doing like 10 interviews a month almost, or not 10. It was like between 5 and 10. It depended on, you know, who I had lined up and things like that. But yeah, so that's the long-winded explanation as to why I've taken a step back.
I'm curious between, I guess, chiefly the guests, but Josh and Dez as well. But so as I said earlier, podcasting is more than what most people perceive it to be. It's more than just a conversation. It's an art. You have to cultivate the discussion in a certain way to make it intriguing, and also find a way to really keep it flowing. So I'm kind of curious on what are you guys' thoughts on how do you curate a good conversation? How do you specifically go about doing that?
Honestly, man, I make sure I do a vibe check before I even do the interview. So I sit down and I chop it up with the person before we even get into the conversation, because I want to know what type of person they are, how comfortable they are. You know, obviously I try my best to make them comfortable and make them feel like, you know, they can be vulnerable and things like that. And I always ask them, you know, okay, is there anything you don't want to talk about or anything that you would rather not touch on? Because I don't want to, you know, bring up past traumas or, you know, step on somebody's toes or anything like that. So I just really make it a point to understand the person before going into the interview. And then once I go into the interview, honestly, it kind of just goes on autopilot from that point. I'm not going to lie. There's no like rhyme or reason for me when it comes to interviews. It just kind of just flows. Like I sit down, I ask them a question, and based on how they answer the question, I'll either use that as fuel to ask another question, or I'll dig deeper into their explanation as to, you know, why they feel the way they feel about that, or, you know, whatever the case may be. But generally, I kind of bounce off of that person's energy, and we kind of make it go like that. So yeah, for me personally, that's how I do it.
What about you, Larry?
It's mainly my energy overall that keeps the podcast going and everything like that. Because I know how to change my voice trajectory where I sound serious or like there's authority in my voice and stuff like that, or just to be goofy, whatever. Or as far as like my overall vibe, I know how to make people feel comfortable, like, or make it feel like I'm there with them, or like just how my thought process is. Because when I'm come up with a topic, it's mainly something that's either going on in today's world or something that people don't like to talk about. And I'm confrontational, so I really don't care. So I'm one of the people, I would say something that's not supposed to be said at that time frame, but it's the right thing to say, if you know what I mean. So it's mainly just that energy of me not caring, but I care about the people that's listening, if that makes sense. It's like, yeah, I don't want to talk about, you know, racism for real, because that's something that's something that's currently still going on, we know, but I'm gonna talk about it because I feel like I would say something and a lot of people would take some type of form of action. Because when I made a podcast like that last year, a lot of people was not reposting my podcast, but reposting stuff similar to my podcast because they heard my podcast. And I'm just like, yeah, I got that charisma when I want to. It's just, if I want to bring it out, I can make the show 100
The ability to
times.
influence.
Yeah, but it's all about the message for me. If you get the message, you get it. If you don't, oh well. Honestly.
I agree with Sherman. I'm kind of on the same page with him. It's like a flow thing. I don't really have a set thing I really want to do. Like, I don't write stuff down anymore. Like, I'll write a question down. Like, I didn't have any questions coming into this podcast. I wasn't sure how it was going to be, but hearing you guys talk though, I formulated a question, and I have another question too. So I don't really have an actual plan as far as what I want to do. It really just depends on the guests, like their flow, how they want to do it, and then I'll ask questions that goes along. Sometimes I do have questions beforehand, and then I'll actually ask the questions, but it just depends on the actual topic and then what we're actually talking about. But usually, if I'm talking to people like in a podcast in this area, then I will find a question that I would answer. I would actually want to ask because I'm actually interested in knowing the answer. So, you know, I don't really have an actual specific plan as far as how I curate. Just ask questions, going with the flow. Because I feel like once you try to plan stuff out more, it doesn't go according to plan. And when it doesn't go according to plan, I'm kind of like mentally jacked up to the point. I'm just like, God damn, it didn't go according to plan. Now I gotta reset and do something else. But yeah, that's how I am. It goes with the flow.
See, I actually differ from you on that. I do believe in planning. I do a lot of planning prior to these episodes, and I do understand why you say the deviation of a plan could be seen as a bad thing and it could piss you off, which it would do me too. But except my only plan when I have a podcast episode is just to have a good discussion. So I don't really have a set trajectory or set endpoint that I want to reach. But as long as we're having a good discussion, I'm fine with that. I do have certain things that I want to address. Prior to the shooting of an episode that week, I try to immerse myself in that subject, think about it on the back burner continuously, at least for that week. And then prior to people coming on, especially guests that I've never experienced before, like with Sherman or even with Larry back when you were unfamiliar to the channel, I would listen to your episodes. Like, I think this past week, I revisited some of the ones that I listened to before of yours, Larry, back to the one with Select to Support, my personal favorite that you've done. And then more recently, the one that you did about dating is weird. I think that was the exact title of it. That one was pretty funny. And then Sherman, my favorite episode that I listened to of his while I was preparing for this was the one he had with the young woman, Melody. She's in marketing and lots of gems on that episode. And then also the episode that he did, I revisited with Matthew Pierce, who you guys know he's been on the podcast before in our early days. That's how I actually encountered Sherman. It was just because Matt had also been a guest on Sherman's platform. And so just really digging into and understanding who it is that we're going to be talking to, because I feel that allows me to be more informed when it comes to asking questions about the guests and tailoring things specifically to them to kind of get the discussion moving in a way that's not just simple. Where are you from? Kind of like typical interview things you were saying earlier, Sherman. If I know about your background, I knew about Reanimator, for example. So if you didn't bring that up, I was going to ask you about that because I pretty much drew the line between the dots of that having a lot to do, the success of that, and the decline of the 7.5 Junction podcast, which I've also checked out some of the Reanimator series. It's also good stuff. The one specifically on Goon and his rage.
Oh,
yeah.
Yeah,
that was good stuff. And like I said, I completely understand that the shift in priority just because of the success of that. And that's awesome. But to get back to the central point is there's a lot of preparation. And subconsciously, I'm always preparing for these episodes, whether it be through reading something that's unrelated. And I think about, like, Josh comes up, he says, all right, he has a question. And I've read a book maybe 2 months ago that ties into it. I still consider that preparation. If it happens to be something I'm talking to my sister and she brings something up that ties into a question that we're going to talk about, that's preparation. So I look at life experiences, anything that I consume in terms of media, anytime that I have a thought, anytime that I do things, I think of those are all related experiences that go into the preparation of the episode. And it's so much more complex than just getting on here and talk. Because, like, we could come up here with no agenda. I could send you a Zoom invite. We go on here, shoot the shit, and talk about nothing and get a very surface level discussion, kind of like what I was saying about my dissatisfaction with a lot of the relationships that people in early freshman year of college. Just very surface level interactions, get on here, talk about nothing of consequence, and get off. Whereas I really want to focus on the deeper underlying implications and kind of get the real nuggets of gold, get the gems, and kind of maximize that so we have a meaningful conversation that we can put out. So that's my approach and how we differ a little bit. Not saying we don't have the same goal, but it's just a different way that we conceptualize how we go about it.
Yeah, no, that's the beauty of just podcasting in general, is everybody's roadmap, as I'll call it, to that end goal is different. Like some people, they don't really do much preparation. They just kind of go into it and let it flow. Other people, they, like yourself, you do a lot of preparation, do a lot of research and stuff like that. So yeah, I guess it just boils down to who you are as a person. Like I said, I'll do my research too prior to the interview, because I want to make sure that I don't ask them something and because the worst thing you can do is like have an interview. I had one interview that was just horrible. I did an interview with these guys. I can't remember their names right now.
You published it?
Yeah. You can find it. It was one of the earlier ones. I did it it was like around Christmas time almost. So like I was already busy with other stuff. So I just didn't even think to do much research on them. But I did an interview with them and I asked them something. They're like in the interview, they're like, yeah, I figured you would have, done some research on us before the interview, this, that, and third. I was like, no, you got me. That's facts. I can't even be mad. You know what I'm saying? Like that's what it is. I could have, but at the end of the day, you know what I'm saying? I was like, one, y'all ain't as big as y'all trying to make yourself seem, for one, and two, it's like y'all ain't paying me for this, so I don't have to. I don't have to do that. It would have been cool, you know what I'm saying? Yeah, I could have gave you that courtesy, but at the end of the day, you know what I'm saying? Like I didn't need y'all to come up here and do the interview, and it was a bad interview. Like, you know what I'm saying? We rebounded from it, you know what I'm saying? And it went back on course, but that kind of threw me off during the interview. And I was like, all right, you motherfuckers, man, cool. Because they didn't have to say that during the interview, you know what I'm saying? Because they were saying it as if they were like, the way, at least how I took it, it was like, oh, I figured you did research on it, you know what I'm saying? Like, as if you're big enough for me to be like, oh, I have to have my T's crossed, my I's dotted. I got to make sure that I know specifically who you are, when you was born, where you was from, your first EP, like all that shit. I'm like, nah, y'all ain't like that. You know what I'm saying? You're not that guy, but I digress. Yeah, you know the vibes. I digress though, but yeah, man, I've had that's like my only bad interview, I would say. And again, I didn't have the prep time just because it was like around Christmas time and stuff like that, and I was just busy with other stuff, you know what I'm saying? Like, life happens sometimes, you can't really prioritize other things. So
it's weird because you say interview, and I know Bryan says he doesn't like seeing like how he's interviewing people.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I'm like, I don't really do the research. I just do it as a flow thing, because I feel when I do research, I'm more of interviewing people like, oh, so you have this going on, so tell me about this, you know. And I feel like that's more of an interview format rather than just letting stuff flow. Like, I don't know anything about you, but now I'm learning a whole bunch of shit about you because we're just talking to have a good discussion. So yeah, so that's why I don't really do that. And I'm kind of different from Bryan too. One thing I probably never told any of you guys, like, I don't like public speaking. I never liked public speaking. I took public speaking in TCC. I fucking hated it. And when I come up here, I look at that as public speaking. So every time I actually come on this fucking podcast, I'm nervous as fuck. Just to let you guys know that. I'm nervous as fuck every time I come on that podcast. So that's how I look at it. And I try not to think about it too much, because once I think about it too much, I'm going to come up here and be like, oh shit, what the fuck am I supposed to say again? You know, I'm just forgetting everything I have to fucking say. So that's why I try to like put it back in the back burner. Like, I take it seriously, but not too seriously to the point like, okay, we got a podcast at 6 o'clock. What the fuck am I talking about? What am I gonna do? What am I gonna say? You know. So I try not to take it that seriously, but I of course take it seriously to the point that this is a future thing that I want to keep doing. You know what I mean? So that's really the difference between me and Bryan.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you said that too, because a lot of people, like, not everybody can be a podcaster. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'll be the first person to tell you, like you cannot be anything you want to be in life. Like, as messed up as it sounds. Okay, let me rephrase that. You can, but you have to alter who you are as a person to fit the bill for whatever it is you're trying to do. So if you want to be a podcaster, you have to know how to talk to people, and you have to know how to project your thoughts and how to speak. If you don't know how to do that, it's going to be a terrible podcast, just because you're not conducting it well, and you're not putting in the words that you need to do. So you have to literally transform who you are as a person. If you're introverted, throw it out the door, because you're going to have to be extroverted. You're going to have to interact with people. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's things that you have to do and change within yourself if you want to be whatever it is you want to do. So you can be whatever you want. You're going to have to make some changes though. So I don't like preaching that anybody can do anything, but you can if you put in that work and you make those changes. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, like you said though, like with the preparation and stuff, like some people like everybody's different. So Bryan, he likes to do a lot of preparations, but if you did the preparations, you would, you know, go up here and you'd be like, oh shit, I gotta make sure I talk about this, I gotta make sure I talk about that, I gotta make sure I hit this bullet, you know what I'm saying? And then you get jumbled up with that. And sometimes people might do it to the point where it's like, oh man, this sounds really scripted, you know what I'm saying? And that's the last thing you want. You don't want it, you know, to be scripted. You want it to be a cohesive conversation, a smooth flow of consciousness. So yeah, everybody's different in how they handle it, man. So yeah, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
What are some of you guys' favorite episodes that you've done? I've spoken with Josh and Des about this in the past, and feel free to chime in and share those with these guys, and as well as the new viewers, but specifically for Larry and Sherman. Favorite / most impactful, whether it be a solo or a guest discussion.
It was actually my favorite one is the men versus women one that I did, and I had a guest. Her name was Kayla Bree. Yeah. So it was just fun to have that discussion, because that's something I wanted to like talk about for a while on my podcast, and I was just like, yo, I get to actually do it, but I'm not gonna do that topic alone. I need a woman here to defend her side as I'm defending my side as a man. So it was just funny to hear like the common things we don't like about each other and things of that nature. It was just real funny, but it was more impactful for the fact that it showed that like it's not like the stereotypical like thing that's going on right now. Like men can't like explain themselves to women, or women don't like to listen, because we basically did that. We both was just listening to each other and explaining everything that we just like. So it was just like real funny, but impactful at the same time.
I always have issues answering this question, because I've done a lot of interviews, and every interview is different. Even the artist interviews, like I say a lot of them are the same, but they still end up going differently. I have to force it to go differently, of course, but Man, I'll have to say my favorite interview. Okay, so I'll say one of my favorite. I can't give a favorite. Like I it's impossible. There's no way. But one of my favorite interviews was with one of my friends, Gerald White. He is a producer, local to the area, or he was local. Excuse me. I think he still has a studio here, actually. But I was just talking to him, and he was going into all the legalities and stuff behind, making, because he's a producer, and he helped produce. Well, he's a producer / engineer, excuse me. He was part of the production process for one of the songs on the Lion King movie with Beyonce out there and stuff like that. Like he was on the credits for that, so he's Grammy nominated. So fire dude, but he was talking about the legalities and the contracts and all the things that go into it that artists don't understand going into the music industry. You know what I'm saying? Because like obviously you're a music artist, you go in the music industry, you're like, okay, cool, I want to get signed, I want to do X, Y, Z. Well, you gotta read the fine print, you gotta make sure you have a lawyer, you gotta make sure that everything is good to the point that you're not getting screwed over as far as the contract is concerned. He said always make sure like you're doing like beats and you're selling beats to people and stuff like that, make sure there's always a contract, make sure there's sections in there for royalties or how monetization is going to work with that. Are you going to sell them the beat or are you going to license the beat? Like this. It was just a wealth of information. I feel like a lot of people just didn't get that. And then the other interview was with Kelly Price. That one was dope. She was a songwriter I was talking about earlier, and she taught me a lot about writing music and stuff like that. Like that was dope. The interview with the lady that sells sex toys and sex advice, like that was dope too. Like I learned, interestingly enough, what a dental dam is. I don't know if y'all heard of a dental dam, but it's like a reverse condom, I guess. Like if you're giving a girl head or something like that. Never heard of it, but I was like, cool, that's what's up. You know what I'm saying? So I learned something from that. And again, like I said, that's what I want to do. I want to learn. I want to put content out that other people can learn from. And any interview that I learn from or that I can help other people learn from is one of my favorites. So that's why it's hard to just decide like one. I can't decide one, bro, because I just learned so much from doing it. So it's definitely made me a more worldly person for sure.
Josh, do you have, after I guess the last time we spoke on this subject, and then Des too, I guess I'll start with Des. So the last time we spoke on this about the favorite or most impactful episode that we've done in your personal experience, I think, or it may have been around episode 50. So this is 50 episodes ago. So quite a bit has changed since then. So what would you say was your favorite episode or most impactful episode that we've done?
I don't know, man. I think I'm very, how can I say it? Very structured mentally. So like I don't do a lot of recall as far as like our past work. I think as far as the season goes, my favorite episode that we've done thus far is the one we actually released last Saturday, and that's the power behind disconnecting to reconnect, and that's like one of my most favorite episodes because it was really a topic that I really held close to me as far as purpose, and them presenting it to Josh and Bryan and allowing them to chime in on it. But as far as me, like that was something that and if you guys haven't seen it, it's really related to growth during the pandemic, or if we want to call it a pandemic. But essentially, everyone, I wouldn't even say everyone that went through it, but everyone was battling something during the pandemic. You're locked in your home. You no longer have like these channels to escape. And what worked for me was kind of like disconnecting from everything that we thought we really needed, whether it be relationships, whether it be toxic habits, and really breaking it down to what allows you to connect with yourself first and foremost, and everyone else second. And that was like being able to articulate that in the manner that I felt I did last Sunday, or technically this past Tuesday, but we won't go into that. But it was really one of my favorite because it was a topic that like I felt needed. That's one that we needed to do because of the relevance it had to the current state of, call it the state of affairs or state of emotions or state of people.
That was a really dope episode. I was very happy with that discussion and the way it turned out. I wasn't thinking about how it applied to specifically before we started talking and during a COVID context. I was just thinking about the general concept, but as you said, it was extremely relevant. Josh, what about you?
I'm kind of on the same page with Dez. As far as like not really looking back. As I look through my stories though, I do post some of the episodes I do really am interested in. So I would say episode 59, when we talk about effective parenting and cultural differences. The snitching one, when we talked about snitching. The reconnecting one too, the one that Dez was talking about. And that's just a few that I can actually name that I actually remember. I do like when we talked about like what it is to be black too, and we talked about like the repercussions of the Derek Chauvin case and everything like that too. I do like those episodes. But usually every time, another thing I never said anything, but every time you ask me like how do you think the podcast go, I honestly always base it off of how I done on the podcast, if I was extremely articulate during the podcast and everything like that. It's not that I like push you guys to the side like as far as your performances or anything, but I know that every time I come on this podcast, you guys are going to be A1 basically as far as what you guys want to say, how you articulate it and everything. So I'm never worried about that. But every time you ask me like how do you feel about the podcast, I think about how I actually did during the podcast, and then during the editing process, if I have to like skim through what I'm talking about, then I'm not the most pleased with how I done. But as far as like my favorite ones, I don't really look back as far as like my old work. I've been like that. But just to name a few, I like the effective parenting one, the snitching one, and then the disconnecting one too. I really like those.
That's interesting.
I got a quick question for Josh. Josh, has anyone ever told you that you have a very striking resemblance to Mal, Rory and Mal, like from the Joe Budden podcast?
No.
No? You remind me a lot of Mal, like as far as like the demeanor and stuff like that, and like the way you like talk and stuff like that, articulate yourself. So that was interesting. But
I take that as a compliment. Thank you.
No, it definitely is. Nah, because I mean,
no, I do. I got you. I do. I take it as a compliment.
But So another question I did have though, on a serious note, what was y'all's opinion on the snitching one? I'm definitely curious what y'all thought about that whole discussion.
Well, first we broke down as far as what is snitching. Like, because people have different definitions of the snitching thing, but we all basically came to a consensus that it was fucking stupid, I think Dez quoted a Pharrell interview when he was talking about him like, if I'm gonna snitch, I'm a snitch. Like I remember Dez talking about that. But yeah, we just talked about it, what is snitching and how people confuse snitching, like what is actually is snitching, you know what I mean? We went through that, and then we just like, it's stupid, like go to the cops, bro. If you get your car stolen, go to the cops, bro. It's fine. Like, it's cool.
Yeah.
But yeah,
a large part of it was centered around, was snitching detrimental to the black community as a whole? That was pretty much the second half of the discussion. So there lies the tie-in to Pharrell that Des brought in. That was brilliantly timed. Des, you can feel free to add anything else that you want.
I think it was just verbatim what Pharrell said. It was on Drink Champs, and then pretty much the entire mindset Pharrell had was the song that he has. It's like, sorry nigga, I'm trying to come home. It's like, so he's pretty much, and like I found myself like subconsciously doing the same thing. Like, you don't put yourself in situations that would require you to snitch. It's just as simple as that.
Nah, facts. Yeah, that's how I see it too. Like, I'm not gonna put myself in a position where I'm gonna have to snitch on nobody. But in the same breath, like if I'm in that type of environment where I'm doing dirt, you know what I'm saying? I'm doing dirt with other people, then I'm not gonna snitch because I've made that conscious decision to do that. Right. You know what I'm saying? Like if I'm in the streets, like then I'm gonna abide by the street code. But if I'm not in the streets and like, or say for example, someone trying to get me hand up for some shit I didn't do, and I know who did it, motherfucker, you going down because I didn't. I had nothing to do with it, bro. Why? Simple as that. Like, why am I gonna take the rap for some motherfucker I don't even know from a can of paint? Nah.
It's because you want people to see you real.
Hell nah, bro. Like, yeah, I'm real behind these bars. You know what I'm saying? I gotta do 25 to life because I ain't snitch on some random nigga. You know what I'm saying? Hell nah, bro. Like if you did some shit and I got caught up in your bullshit and I had nothing to do with it, sorry, nigga, I'm trying to come home. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's just what it is. But if I'm in the streets, you know what I'm saying, I'm doing street shit with you, it is what it is. I assume that risk, you know what I'm saying, when I went in the streets with you. So I gotta abide by that code. But if I'm not doing that stuff, I'm not with that rah-rah stuff, I'm sorry. Like, it ain't got nothing to do with me, bro. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, I was definitely curious what y'all's opinion on that was.
Another tie-in too was the Meg Thee Stallion and Tory Lanez situation. I'll just call it that. And it's still like a lot unclear. I don't know.
I still
up from down with the exact. I don't. Yeah, exactly.
I still don't know, bro.
But the concept of unearned loyalty, because at one point Megan said something around the lines of she didn't go to the police because she didn't want Tory to get in trouble because she knew what the police were doing to us as black people, and just the idea that there was unearned loyalty in that sense, to where if somebody was physically endangering you and you're still doing things to protect them, it's like the same thing you said, except for instead of sorry nigga, I'm trying to come home, it's like, okay, you shoot me, we're not in the streets, either one or two things. It's going to be legal retaliation or retaliation on the spot. So I'm not going to protect you. There's no protection if you harm me physically. It's just simple.
Yeah.
So
no, that's facts. And Meg's not, she's not in the street. She's not trying to be no thug life shit. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, you shot a woman at the end of the day that she's not gang banging. She's not trying to get you set up. Nothing. Like, there is no immediate danger to your physical well-being. And you shot her. You know what I'm saying? I don't know what happened. Like I said, to this day, I don't know what's going on with that case, who did what. Like, people say she got shot in the foot and they showed pictures of her feet and they look fine. I don't know, bro. I have zero idea. I couldn't tell you. I don't know what's going on with that, but yeah.
Glad we're on the same page, Sherman.
Yeah, no, it's a blank page. It don't make no sense.
You have anything else, Bryan?
Yeah, just this one last thing. So aside from the generic bullshit advice you could give somebody, what's one piece of advice, one piece of meaningful advice, might I add, that you would give someone looking to start a podcast? Besides just do it, because that's
just fucking do it.
Like Nike's coming for your ass if you say that. Like, they're gonna wrap you up in litigation. so don't do it. But
no, I do think that's like the biggest thing though. People just procrastinate or they hesitant to actually put it out. Because usually when you actually put it out, you have an idea like, oh, okay, does this work? Does this not work? Should I continue? What's going on? So I do feel that is crucial advice, but as far as other advice, you guys can go on and say something.
Okay. Yeah, no, I definitely would say, one, don't come in the podcast and thinking that you're going to make a bunch of money and get a bunch of sponsorships, because it does not work like that. Podcasting is probably the single-handed most difficult thing to build an audience on, honestly, just because there's so many of them. You have to be interesting, you know what I'm saying, enough to where people are going to want to actually listen to your podcast. I mean, and when it comes to getting like sponsorships and things like that, you have to have a certain amount of downloads. You have to have a certain amount of monthly listens. Like, it's very difficult. So don't come into it thinking it's going to be a get rich quick thing, because it's not. There's nothing like. Also, know what your podcast is going to be about. What is it that you're passionate about, that you enjoy talking about? Because if you're just coming up here to talk about things that you have zero interest in, it's going to be a very boring podcast. It's going to be mature. You're not going to enjoy it. You know what I'm saying? So make sure you know what you want to talk about, what you're passionate about. If you're not the type of person that can talk to people, you need to become the type of person that can talk to people, or just talk in general. If it's a solo podcast, like if it's just you, it's even more difficult, because now you're just talking, and now you're just like, oh, I'm just aimlessly talking and nobody's listening, which at the time they're probably not, unless you're doing a live podcast, you know. And that could be something you can implement as well. You know, you could just, you know, hey, I'm doing my podcast, I'm going live on Instagram, and then you have the Instagram chat up, so that way you can interact with people up there, and that way you don't feel like you're alone and, you know what I'm saying, just talking to yourself. So there's many different ways, but and generically just getting started, because a lot of people get strung up on, oh, it has to be perfect, it has to be this way, it has to be that. If you spend your time trying to perfect something before you even start, you'll never start because you're never going to be perfect. You know what I'm saying? Just put it out there and just go from there, because a lot of people do enjoy seeing the journey. They do enjoy seeing the growth from point A to point, you know, Z. So make sure that you show them, okay, I started here, but then 6 months later, here I am now. Like, I've improved my audio quality. I've improved if it's a visual podcast, I've improved my setup. You know what I'm saying? I got a better camera. Like, whatever it is, you know what I'm saying? Show people that roadmap so that way they feel like they're growing with you. And it just makes it that much more of a cohesive environment with your viewership and stuff like that. So that's advice I would give.
That's the blueprint. Anybody else want to add anything?
I can say find your voice. Don't bullshit. I'm sorry. But another thing is be genuine. And also just be you, because trying to be like everybody else is not gonna do anything for you, but make you realize you don't like it, as he said. Because if it's for you, it's gonna come natural. If it's not, then you either gotta work for it or find something else to do. Honestly, don't force yourself to be something that you're not.
No, that's facts. I wanted to add. I wanted to add to that too, Larry. Don't compare yourself to other people too. You know what I'm saying? Like, don't sit there and see where somebody else is at that's already established, that's been doing it for a long time, because you're gonna get depressed. You're gonna lose motivation every single time. These people have been out here, they've been doing it longer than you. There's nothing wrong with like looking at what people are doing and seeing how you can do it different, but don't try to emulate it and don't try and compare yourself to it, because you will always crush your hopes and dreams, and you will never, I'm not gonna say you'll never recover, but you will put yourself in a bad place mentally, and it's gonna be tough to pick yourself back up from that, depending on how long you've been doing it. You know what I'm saying? Because you could have been doing a podcast for a year, and you see this person that's been doing it for 5 years, and they're a lot more established than you. But you like, damn, I've been doing this. I've wasted a year of my life. You know what I'm saying? And that can be a hard place to come back from. So you got to make sure that you don't compare yourself to other people too, man.
Never envy. Just never envy people. Just Just love what you do overall.
Des, you got some advice?
Utilize your resources for real. There's so many podcasts out there. Like, way we came up with the Infusion BreakDown Show was kind of like my creative takeoff of one of my favorite podcasts at the time was this is a dude named Matt D'Avella, and his podcast show was solo podcast, but he'd have guests at times. It's called The Ground Up Show. And like Bryan said before, was like we started off drinking tea, and the names that we came up with at the time, it was just like, how can we come up with a name that's catchy, that we can stick with, that will never have to change, and then that we can build off of. And I utilize my resources. Same thing when it comes to like my aspirations for the aesthetic side. Like, there's people that have done it before. Like, you can take bits and pieces without copying them and make it your visual set. Like, it's like Sherman just said, like if you're chasing perfection before you even start, you'll never start. So part of getting started is utilizing your resources, and then doing what Larry said as well, is like writing down what your intent is for however many episodes. I personally don't do that, but what we do before the season starts is we have a Google Doc and we put down topics of interest. And we'll have like, hey, set episodes. If it's an episode that we really don't want to talk about, or if there's a week coming up to where we don't have an episode selected yet, we'll pull from that idea, because we're all bright individuals. And I think really what my biggest advice is gauge yourself. Like, for me, I've always been the friend that can give advice. I've always been the friend that can articulate in layman's terms the advice that I'm giving you, whether your IQ is on par with me, or if you're one of my friends that needed dumbed down a bit. Like, I've always been able to do that. So me knowing where I'm at intellectually, as far as like things that excite me, things that bore me, things that I like to talk a lot about, like I take all of that and I piece it together so we can have like 1/3 or 2/3 or 3/3 of a collective that all know how to articulate each other's opinions without sounding the exact same.
I'd add to that too, is one thing that Larry, and maybe Sherman a little bit, you guys touched on was identifying a niche. So figuring out what exactly is going to set you apart is really at the heart of what Josh was asking earlier. If you are looking to go down the podcasting route, and then first and foremost is to become a student, adopt a learner's mindset in which you are continuously growing and looking to expand your knowledge base, whether you're talking about pottery or Shark Week or whatever it is, or exactly what we're doing, but just take everything in, just find ways to continuously improve and learn, because as a consequence, it's going to make you a better individual, more well-rounded, but then also increase whatever product you're creating.
Great.
Josh, you want to bring us home?
No, I agree with everything you guys said. I was just going to reference what Sherman said about not comparing, because I remember I used to, just for my movie reviews, I remember I used to look at other people's movie reactions, be like, damn, really? This y'all like this? But cool. We just wait to see mine. But
I've been there, bro. I do reactions too. Trust me, I've been there.
Yeah, just like, really? All right, man. Mine shit is way better, but all right, cool. We'll see. Yeah. Yeah, just like not comparing, but also taking like what they're doing and then try to make it better, try to make it different. That was my biggest thing coming into it, because I didn't want to procrastinate as far as like putting out videos. And I'm glad I actually did. I wish I would have done it earlier, of course, but I'm glad I actually did it where I did, because looking at where I am now, I'm like, okay, I like, even though I don't have that many subscribers, like I like what I'm doing and I like the progress, the trajectory I'm going. So I definitely understand. I agree with you guys. Yeah. Anything else you have, Bryan?
From me, no. The guest, any last words?
I do got a question for y'all.
Sure.
So out of the three of you, who does what? So it seems like Bryan, you kind of do the scheduling and the topics and stuff like that. Joshua, you seem like you do the editing. Who does what?
More or less. So you kind of like, so the questions, they range from the three of us. It depends. Mm-hmm. We all put contributions down in terms of like the scheduling and putting together the guests for what week. That's the stuff that I do, and reaching out to different people. Josh, you brought guests before, and Des, but most of the guests have been people who I've contacted or have contacted me directly. And Josh does most of our editing, which is anytime like putting the videos together, that's him. This helps out a lot with creative direction and helping us restructure and reformat, and he was instrumental in us getting this new logo redesign, which is awesome. Shout out to Des again, and Steven, of course. And then myself with a lot of the promotional stuff. If you talk to like the Infusion BreakDown Show IG page, so any kind of marketing or stuff like that, you're talking to me.
Okay, dope. Well, yeah, no, I got nothing else, man. Just, obviously thank you for the opportunity. I appreciate y'all having me up here, man. This is dope. Definitely keep doing what y'all doing, man. It's fire. Y'all what, 100 episodes in?
105.
105. Okay. 105. Dope, man. Well, here's the many more, man. Appreciate y'all.
Absolutely. Thank you. 1 second before we wrap up.
We have Des usually at the end of the episode. Des usually gives some type of recommendation of the week.
Okay.
Whether it's like a album or book or whatever. We have some, Des?
And then after that we have about 5 minutes where we just get your thoughts on the recording.
Okay, but
yeah. So recommendation of the week started off as album week, like you said, but I think we're gonna keep straying away from it a bit more. Get away from your phone and technology. Last week it was Catch a Sunset. This week is gonna be Go on a Hike. This coming weekend is actually the weekend I don't have my son, so I want to go check out Hawksbill Loop. There was just like like those random Instagram videos that pop up, and it was like 5 adventurous places in Virginia to visit, and it's like Hawksbill Loop is like overlooking the Shenandoah Valley, and I always said like I wanted to just isolate myself out there for a weekend. That was actually supposed to be what I do that was supposed to have been what I did when I graduated college, but of course a year before that I had my son and then got obligations, so like that's gonna be something I finally knock off my list. It's been 4 years past due.
All right, man. Wow. You guys got it. Go for a fucking hike. Get the fuck out of here. But if you guys like the discussion, don't forget to hit the like button. We're going to see you guys next week. Peace.
But while you're here, be sure to check out other great content from the Breakdown crew, including previous episodes of the podcast, Joshua vs. Movies, Joshua versus music, and of course, haven't forgotten about my plant lovers, feel the love. Just check out this begonia.